Welcome back, listeners. Ready to dive into another fascinating world? Today, we're stepping into E.M. Forster's A Room with a View.
Ah, A Room with a View, a classic.
We're going to unpack those timeless themes, social class, societal expectations, the whole shebang. And we've got excerpts, so we're going right to the source.
Excellent. I always think it's fascinating how Forster takes something as simple as a room with a view and turns it into, well, a symbol, really, of Lucy Honeychurch's own longing for something more.
Right. It's not just about pretty scenery. It's about what that view represents: freedom, possibilities. And we see this from the very beginning, right there in the Pension Bertolini. Remember, that's where we first meet Lucy.
Yes, the Pension Bertolini, that wonderfully chaotic setting where everyone's thrown together, the British tourists clinging to their social rituals, and then, boom, the Emersons arrive.
The Emersons talk about shaking things up.
Oh, absolutely. Their directness, their lack of, shall we say, social grace, throws everyone into a tizzy, especially poor Charlotte Bartlett. You can practically feel her discomfort in those early scenes.
Oh, Charlotte, bless her heart. Remember that look on her face when the Emersons offer their rooms with a view? She's horrified.
It's a complete breach of decorum in her eyes. But then, that's precisely what makes the Emersons so intriguing. They challenge the status quo, force everyone to confront their own, perhaps unexamined, ways of being. Remember that line where Mr. Emerson asks, quite pointedly, "Why do you travel?"
Oh, I love that line. It cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it? He's challenging their motives, their priorities. And I think deep down, it rattles them.
It does. Because he's right, isn't he? They're so caught up in appearances, in following the prescribed social script, that they've lost sight of the point of it all.
And this is what makes Lucy's reaction so interesting. Yes, she's initially taken aback by the Emersons' unconventionality, but there's a part of her that's drawn to it. It's like a breath of fresh air in this stifled world she's accustomed to.
Absolutely. Remember that pivotal scene in Santa Croce where Lucy faints after witnessing the murder?
Oh, such a powerful scene. It's like a turning point for her.
It is. And who comes to her rescue? Not Cecil Vyse, the epitome of proper British society, but George Emerson. It's a subtle detail, but so significant. It's as if that experience, traumatic as it is, awakens something within her.
She sees the fragility of life, the limitations of her own sheltered world, and Italy itself becomes a symbol of this awakening: the art, the culture, the passion. It's also different from her life back in England.
Exactly. It's a world of possibilities, of unbridled emotion, of living life to the fullest, and that contrast becomes even more pronounced when she returns to England, doesn't it?
It does. It's like she stepped back into a cage after having a taste of freedom. And then, to make matters even more complicated, she accepts Cecil Vyse's proposal.
Ah, Cecil. The embodiment of everything. Lucy's beginning to question social status, propriety, the whole shebang.
He's safe, predictable, but is he what Lucy truly wants?
That's the question, isn't it? And as if the universe itself is trying to give her a nudge, who reappears in her life but the Emersons.
They rent a cottage near Lucy's home. It's like fate is intervening, throwing them all back together.
Oh, absolutely. And it throws Lucy into complete turmoil, doesn't it?
It does. She's torn between Cecil, who represents security, societal approval.
The life she's always been taught to want.
Exactly. But then there's George, who represents, well, passion, authenticity, a different way of looking at the world.
And it's not just an intellectual attraction, is it? There's a definite spark between them.
Oh, there's definitely a spark. You can feel the tension in those scenes where they're alone together.
Especially that scene in the woods.
Right, where George finally confronts her.
He's so frustrated by her impending marriage to Cecil, and he just lets loose, doesn't he?
He does. He tells her she's making a mistake, that she'll never be truly happy with Cecil. And then, of course, the kiss.
Oh, that kiss. Right in front of Miss Bartlett. You'd think she'd be scandalized, but there's this strange look on her face, almost like she's pleased.
It's so weird. It's like she's been waiting for this to happen.
It's as if, on some level, she understands what Lucy's going through, this internal struggle between societal expectations and what her heart truly desires.
Maybe. But regardless, that kiss changes everything. It sets off this chain of events.
Lucy breaks off her engagement with Cecil.
Which takes guts. I mean, talk about going against the grain.
It does. But even though she's chosen freedom, it's not all smooth sailing from there, is it? She's plagued by doubts, worries about what people will say.
Right. She's still very much aware of societal expectations. She's trying to break free, but it's hard.
It's like those expectations are so deeply ingrained, it's hard to shake them off completely. And it's interesting because it's not just Lucy who struggles with this. Even Mr. Emerson, who encourages her to be true to herself, he carries this weight of societal judgment too.
That's right. That scene where he reveals the truth about his wife.
Heartbreaking, isn't it? He clearly loved her deeply, but their relationship was, well, unconventional for the time.
And he's still haunted by the way society judged them.
It shows how those societal pressures can have a lasting impact, even on those who dare to defy them.
And let's not forget Cecil. He might seem like the villain of the story.
The uptight, controlling fiancé.
Right. But he's a product of his environment, too. He's so focused on maintaining appearances.
And trying to mold Lucy into his idea of the perfect wife.
Exactly. Remember that scene where Freddie's singing and Cecil's practically cringing?
Oh, yes. He can't handle anything that's the least bit spontaneous or genuine.
It's a stark contrast to George, who embraces life in all its messy glory.
That scene where George, Freddie, and Mr. Beebe go swimming in the pond.
So symbolic. They're shedding their inhibitions, their clothes, embracing pure joy.
It's an important turning point for Lucy, too.
It is. She sees the contrast between George's world, where joy and spontaneity are celebrated, and Cecil's world, where everything is controlled, measured.
And she realizes she doesn't want a life of stifled emotions and suffocated dreams.
No, she wants passion, she wants authenticity, and she wants a love that allows her to be fully herself.
And that brings us back to Miss Bartlett. What are we to make of her? Is she an antagonist, a force of repression? Or is there something more to her than meets the eye?
It's one of the most intriguing aspects of the novel. She's full of contradictions, isn't she?
She is. On the surface, she embodies everything Lucy's trying to escape. Rigid social rules, fear of scandal.
And yet there are these moments where she almost seems to be pushing Lucy towards George.
That scene where she reveals George's kiss to Cecil.
Right. It's as if she's deliberately sabotaging the
Oh,
relationship.
why? What's her motivation?
It's a real head-scratcher. On the one hand, she's all about upholding those social boundaries. But then she does things that completely undermine those very boundaries.
It's almost as if she's driven by two conflicting impulses. On one hand, she's afraid of scandal, of social disapproval. But on the other hand,
She wants Lucy to be happy, even if it means going against everything she claims to believe in.
perhaps. Or maybe it's more complicated than that. Remember, she's lived her whole life within those rigid social structures. Maybe. Maybe she sees a bit of herself in Lucy.
You mean a younger version of herself who still has the chance to break free?
Exactly. Maybe she regrets the choices she made, the chances she didn't take. And in a way, by pushing Lucy towards George, she's vicariously living out those unrealized desires.
It makes you see her in a whole new light, doesn't it? She's not just a one-dimensional antagonist. She's a woman who made sacrifices, maybe even suppressed her own desires to conform to societal expectations.
And that complexity is what makes her character so fascinating. Forster doesn't give us easy answers. He forces us to grapple with these ambiguities, these contradictions.
Just like in real life, right?
Yeah.
People are complicated. We all have our hidden depths, our secret longings.
Exactly. And that's what makes A Room with a View such a timeless novel. It's not just a charming love story. It's a profound exploration of human nature, societal pressures, and the search for self-discovery.
It makes you think about your own life, doesn't it? The expectations we all face, the choices we make, the paths we choose to follow or to ignore.
And the courage it takes to break free from those expectations and create a life that's true to ourselves.
Well said. Forster leaves us with that sense of hope, of possibility. Lucy and George, they choose to build a life together in Italy, a place that represents freedom, passion, a break from the confines of their upbringing.
It's a reminder that we have the power to choose our own views, both literally and metaphorically. We don't have to be limited by the expectations of others or the confines of our past.
So listeners, as you go about your day, ask yourself, what view do you want for your own life? What steps can you take to create that view?
And don't be afraid to embrace the unexpected, to challenge the status quo, to seek out those experiences that broaden your horizons and lead you to a more fulfilling and authentic life.
Beautifully said. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.